for me, I just want to single out one example response.
I would like to make a comment, if I can. I know that I listen to people regard Dick Blumenthal as the gold standard for Attorney General, and I've listened to criticisms of him as well. My own experience with him was in walking around the Apple Fest at his request to meet the citizens of Glastonbury and other towns. My impression at first was that was sort of an other duty as assigned for me because I didn't know him well. After that opportunity to walk around with him, I felt like I knew him incredibly well because he would walk up to people, put out his hand and say, "Hi, my name is Dick Blumenthal," and people would say, "I know who you are." And then they would begin to relate stories, personal stories, stories of things he had done for them. One woman even saw him at a distance, ran up to him and said, I need you to stay right here because I've got to get my husband. You saved my husband's life and I want him to meet you. That kind of personal approach is very hard to duplicate, obviously, and probably it would take the 20 years. This particular election cycle, there has been much controversy around the position of Attorney General. I think you said very wisely that you would not go with a grand list of things that you wanted to do, but just sort out what needed to be done. In general, what separates an exceptional Attorney General for the state versus one who just goes through the motions of doing the job? And the issue of qualifications, obviously.
And it maybe sounds self-serving, but I do think you want someone who really has been engaged in advocacy, on behalf of clients. I think the legislative process is great too, because you do have to understand how policy is made, and you do bring proposals to the legislature, and I think it's useful to understand how that works. But I really think this is an active lawyer job. It's not just you're running a department. You are actually going to court. You're actually trying to decide when a case is the right type of case to bring, what your odds are of winning. I mean, you really have to understand the process of being a lawyer. So I think it's really important that you have someone there who has practiced and really knows the terrain to be effective. And I think that's number one. I think that's an important qualification in my book. Statute, aside, I think you need to have someone who really understands how to be an effective lawyer. Secondly, I really do think you should have someone who's committed to serving for an extended period of time, because anybody who tells you they know exactly how that office runs and exactly what they would do the first day, I think is kidding you. I've interacted with a lot of the attorneys there. There are some really good, civil servants who've been there for a long time, and I respect that they know more about their specific field than I do. And I think you've got to be like anybody who's trying to set the direction of an agency. Understand it, be respectful of it, get to know the people there, understand their perspectives, spend a little time learning how they do things and why, and then start to chart a course that you think makes sense. And I think one of the things you do is you pick those small number of issues that you think really need to be focused on beyond the day job of representing the state agencies. But I guess for me, to be exceptional, it really means you have to be very serious, very committed, willing to put the time and energy and spend enough time there to be really good at it. And then pick the issues that matter most, not the issues that are necessarily the most popular issues. You've got to be willing to say, all right, this is the fight we're taking on because it's the right fight and it serves the most interests that people have, not because it will necessarily be the thing that will look as good on the outside. So to me, that's how I would measure it. I mean, I think you have to have a substantive person who's committed to doing the job for the right reasons and for an extended period of time.
Judy?
Good evening. I'm very interested in health care, and I know that you mentioned that you're very involved in some health care issues. One of the issues that's come up in the state is that we have an insurance commission, as you well know, that's appointed by the governor.
Right.
And over the last 8 years, the insurance commissioner has allowed increases in the cost of premiums for health care, especially WellPoint, up to 30%, 40% increases over the last 8 years, or whatever the increases have been. The increases, from what I understand, and I could be wrong, are not justified or do not have to be justified through the insurance commissioner. And I was wondering how you feel about that issue, about the insurance commissioner being appointed and allowing WellPoint or any other health policies to increase at a level that they are without any justification of why they are being increased at that level.
You know, I think part of it is not to blame the department, because, well, but I could blame them for something, but I will tell you, they're not set up that way. They're not even charged with overseeing and regulating, you know, insurance. I mean, they're really set up to prevent insurers from going bankrupt. I mean, they're to make sure that they have reserves. I mean, so their whole mission, I think, has to be rewritten. I mean, I would say make them an agency that's job is to regulate the practice of insurance in a way that makes sense. Not a commission that really is designed to make sure they don't become insolvent. Have them be funded. I think we're finally funding them through the general budget. For a very long time, they were funded by the insurance companies. And the whole way they're structured, and they typically have former insurance executives as commissioners. And I'm not saying they're inherently biased. I'm just saying the whole way that the department was set up, structured in the past, was never about overseeing the industry, in my view. So before you criticize it for its actions, I'm not saying you are, before anybody does, make its mission a different mission. That's what I would say. I wouldn't mind having an elected insurance commissioner. Various states do that. In our state, the Attorney General has become, in many ways, the insurance advocate, or the healthcare advocate's job has become that, because we don't have an insurance commissioner that sees their function as regulating insurance. So I think it starts with rewriting their whole mission.
I just have a political question.
Please.
Obviously, you have bicyclists running and Jackson. Would you primary? And if you do, what are your chances? Is that a blunt enough question?
Well, yeah, I mean, certainly I would primary. I mean, you can't run a race like this without expecting that you're going to be in a primary. I mean, I don't really know where we'll all be by May in terms of who has what supported, but I'm expecting to qualify, and I expect to primary. I think it's hard to rate your chances in a race like this, which is a little volatile right now. Also, I think it depends a little bit on whether the public financing system remains. I mean, I'm running in the public financing system. I expect to qualify, and I expect to have those resources. It's not clear to me what everyone else's resources would be. I have a strong base in the area that I live in New Haven. I think in a primary, it becomes really a matter of what your operation looks like, what towns are supporting you, and what do they do in the primary to get the votes out for you. Clearly, one of the candidates running now is better known than the other two. But there's a long time between now and the primary, and I think, I feel like I have a really good chance, or I wouldn't have entered the race.
Kim, so nice to meet you, and thank you so much for your time and coming to our town meeting.